Hey, all, welcome to another episode of the Redzone Rodeo podcast. We're going to be bringing to you the full kind of breakdown of the UFL Week 4, Week 5 preview, looking at some power rankings. NFL draft is right around the corner. I want to thank you all for staying with us tonight and seeing where we go. So without further ado, we're going to launch right on in, and we're going to discuss some of the topics that, were ongoing this past week in the UFL. So first up, we've kind of been talking about this a little bit, Rob, but one thing that has been kind of apparent for the Showboats offense is protecting their quarterback. And so the question that I have for you, Rob, is Case Cookus's health detrimental to the Showboat's success this season?
It's kind of tough to answer that because it seems like Cookus is probably going to be out for a while. There's conflicting reports about whether this is a shoulder injury or a collarbone injury. Regardless, it seems like he's going to miss some serious time. But the question we have to ask ourselves is how good were the Showboats before they lost Case Cookus? And the answer is not very good at all. So if you go from just pretty much, losing a lot with Case Cookus to losing a lot without Case Cookus, I don't know if him not being there really makes that much of a difference. I think he's a great quarterback. He just doesn't have a good roster around him. So, he can't really compete the way a lot of these other quarterbacks can. Honestly, it might be for Case Cookus' best interest not to have to play the rest of the season behind that offensive line because he was getting hit a lot. And, he's kind of up there in age. He's already had a lot of bad injuries in his career. Taking all those kinds of hits was just not good for him. So, I mean, the Showboats, obviously, they will be a worse team without Case Cookus, but are they going to be worse than they have been the past few weeks, like overall? Probably not, because they've just been losing a lot anyways. So, uh, yeah, they're worse without Case Cookus, but not that much worse because they really can't be much worse than they already were.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree. I think that, um, I guess to answer this question, I think Case Cookus staying upright will only improve the Showboat's success this season. But how far that success will go is also a really good question because, when he's on the field and he isn't being hit 100 million times each game because his offensive line can't protect him, he's certainly making great throws to Jonathan Adams. Whether or not they're able to get a run game established, that's another thing. We haven't really seen that from Darius Victor except last week where he started to get things going. But absolutely, I mean, there has been a kind of dichotomy between two quarterbacks, where you have Case Cookus, and when he's on the field, the Showboats team is better. But then when Troy Williams comes in, who's the backup quarterback, he hasn't seemed to give the Showboats offense any sort of help from the quarterback position. And so, Rob, I think you're right. This team is just not good enough to really go the full distance. But without Case Cookus being there in the lineup, it's even worse. And so, that's, I guess, is really the question. Do you want to put your quarterback back out there with a faulty offensive line with the potential of getting hurt again? Or, is the injury he sustained against the Battlehawks this past week, is it much more serious than we think? We obviously haven't had the official report come out. We do know it was a shoulder injury. Tough thing with that is that, he's certainly had some problems with his collarbone before, where that has sidelined him for a season, multiple games. So, that's really going to be the question, I guess, going forward for the Showboats right now is, will they even have Case Cookus this upcoming week? And if not, how much can we bet that this team can actually go out there and be able to compete with the rest of the league? Um, that I think is a different question within itself. But I do think if Case Cookus is healthy and upright in the pocket, the Showboats have definitely better success on the field. Without him there, you can kind of see them struggle a lot more. So I would say his health is detrimental to their successes. But I guess, the success is the question mark. Are they going to be able to make that push for a playoff run? I just don't see it with the roster being the way it is right now.
Yeah, they went from 1 to 0 without Case Cookus. It's not a huge drop just because of how bad they already were, but there's certainly a noticeable difference without him at quarterback for sure. Oh, Carson, we were so excited to see Ja'Cour Pearson this weekend, and he absolutely did not let us down. He went off, had a ton of yards, a touchdown. It was so exciting to get to watch him. So, Carson, has the Battlehawks offensive powerhouse finally begun?
I think it has, Rob. I mean, the way they were able to just dominate the showboats was just something to see. I mean, this wide receiver room that uh, St. Louis has is absolutely stacked. I mean, you mentioned Ja'Cour Pearson coming back from injury. Uh, he 100% had an impact on that game. I believe he had like 8 receptions, had a touchdown, all that fun jazz. Really kind of revamped this offense from being great. But not only just him, I mean, you have Hakeem Butler, who again, played tight end all throughout his early kind of play in college and whatnot. Now he's kind of playing the receiver, so he's this giant guy. You have Darius Shepard as well, and Bateman, I believe,
Bateman.
is the name of the other receiver. Yeah, Aitman, yes. Just really this wide receiver room that AJ McCarron has to throw to. It really is an offensive powerhouse. I think that's the only way to really label it. But I also kind of want to add to that as well because yeah, the wide receivers are great, but their running back Sailors, what he was able to do last week was nothing short of amazing. Uh, the run game that they have going for them complements their offensive, big kind of pass plays very, very well. And this offense is probably one of the most complete units that I know of in the UFL right now. We were able to see them dominate against a Showboats defense that I wouldn't say there's anything, great about it. It's okay. Um, the question is going to be, in these upcoming games, how will it fare against some of the better defenses in the league? But they absolutely handed it to the Showboats. It seemed to be going on all cylinders, and they seemed unstoppable. And Rob, we talked about this all season. When Pearson comes back, the Battlehawks, how good they're going to be. This team is really shaping up to be the team that we thought that they were at the beginning of the season. This offensive powerhouse that dominates on the field, and really the only way to beat them is to keep up with them. And I think that a lot of these games that the Battlehawks will be playing, and they're going to be shootouts, based on the fact of can you keep up with them offensively? If you can, then I think it's going to be a close game. You have a chance to beat them. Their defense is good, but if you can keep up with them, it could be a closer game. If you let them run away with it, it's going to be tough. And we saw with the Showboats how their offense faltered with Cookus's injury. But the Battlehawks used that and they kept going on almost every single one of their drives and they scored points. Whereas the Showboats ended up going 3-and-outs and not ending plays in the end zone or with a field goal. So absolutely, I think this Battlehawks offense, the powerhouse has begun.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. Those wide receivers are just absolutely unfair. It's like having Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase. And, I made this comparison last week. We've been raving about these wide receivers all season
Yeah.
long. And now it's finally coming to pass. And the thing is, I think this team is only going to get better. There was on their first drive of the game, they had a pass to Ja'Cour Pearson where it was like a little wide receiver screen on third. And, I think it was like medium. And they had Hakeem Butler going up to try and block for him, and he missed the block completely. And Pearson got blown up, and they had to settle for a field goal on that first drive. And prior to that, Marcel Aitman dropped a pass for what would have been like a 15-yard gain. And these are just dumb mistakes that they didn't really make last year, and I expect them to clean those up as the season goes on. So not only are they amazing right now, but I think they'll be even better in the following weeks. I think a really underrated part of this offense, Carson, you kind of talked about it with the run game, is how good their offensive line has been. They have been amazing
Yeah.
in pass protection for AJ McCarron, letting him stand in the pocket and find his talented receivers. And they've also, like Carson was talking about, they've cleared huge holes in the run game and have allowed them to really add that element to their offense. So not only do they have this electric passing offense fueled by the three best receivers in all of spring football, but they also have a great run game to go along with it. And an underrated part of that run game is AJ McCarron. As crazy as it is
Mhm.
to say, he's been scrambling a lot more than I ever thought he was capable of at age 33 after being a pocket passer his entire career. Watching him run for first downs on an almost weekly basis is kind of insane. I don't know how he managed to add that element to his game when he's already as old as he is, but he did, and it's been effective for them. There's been a few times I could think of where, it's like third and short or whatever, and he manages to find his way out of the pocket and scramble for a first down. So they have a quarterback who has some mobility, which again is shocking to me. They have a great run game, and they have the three best wide receivers in spring football out there making plays for them, and Darius Shepard too, who leads the league in scrimmage yards right now. An absolutely unfair combination of talent on this roster. Their defense is kind of middle of the pack. I don't think they're great, but I don't think they're terrible. But with that offense, I think they absolutely should win every game. They should be favored to win every game they're in for the rest of the season and into the playoffs. Absolutely, the offensive powerhouse has begun.
So shifting over to one of the later night games that actually ended up being a lot later than expected, with the rain that ended up coming down in Alabama, ended up delaying the game. I think an hour and 40 some minutes, crazy kind of that way, but they still came back out and they played, and it was great to see Stallions fans still in the stands wanting to watch the game. I thought that was really good, and I think that's great for the league that there is that uh, want to stay, want to and see the talent, want to see the games despite rain delays. But I digress. This game was a lot closer than I think I even thought it was going to be, and it came down to the wire, with both teams in the final waning minutes kind of battling for that lead, and ultimately the Stallions would take the game and kick a game-winning field goal as seconds expired on the clock. But I guess my question for you, Rob, is based on their performance this week. Is there cause for concern for the Stallions with this close win?
I think there's some causes for concern and some causes for being, impressed and thinking that their success will continue. Concern-wise, I mean, they were really sloppy in this game. Especially, I think they had three consecutive drives that ended in fumbles right there in the beginning of the game. But in context, all of those fumbles happened in the opposing team's red zone, right? So they were driving the ball down the field very well. But then once they got to the red zone, they just made dumb mistakes that led to the defenders recovering the football and then losing a possession and a chance to score points. So I think you could clearly see that the Stallions were the far more talented team, at least on the offensive side of the ball. They were driving up and down all night long. But with the dumb mistakes they were making, I mean, I would definitely be concerned about that. Because against some of these better teams like the Battlehawks, if you make mistakes like that, you're not going to be able to get a win that way. You have to clean up those mistakes if you're the Stallions, and I would be concerned until the Stallions show that they can avoid those mistakes. But also on the other side of the coin, when they got the ball down by what was it, like one or two, with only a minute left, they managed to drive right down the field and kick the game-winning field goal. So this team has all the pieces absolutely that they need to make a championship run. They're super
Hmm.
talented all across the board. It's just a matter of executing properly and not being sloppy. If they can do that, then I think they can also contend with just about anyone. Although I'd still say the Battlehawks are just a little bit better. But yeah, concerned about the mistakes, excited about the talent. I think that's just pretty much how you have to feel looking at the Stallions team right now.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and I know there's probably going to be some Stallions fans and other people who might push back and be like, "Well, it was a rainy game, there was certainly weather at play." But as you even mentioned, Rob, with some of those beginning drives where mistakes like early that were made early on, and that was kind of before the weather kind of turned for the worse, and I think we're talking about the Stallions here, but I think the defenders also did a very good job defensively playing against the Stallions, making the stops where they needed to. And I wouldn't necessarily say the defenders' defense is I would say it's probably middle of the pack, kind of with the Battlehawks. Um, I actually have some concern if the defenders were able to kind of handle the Stallions a little bit, cause some turnovers, cause some mistakes, be able to hang in with the Stallions all game. What can some of the other tougher teams, especially even in their conference, the USFL conference, what can they do? In the likes of Michigan and the likes of Houston. We already saw the Stallions play the Michigan Panthers, and we saw that defense, the Michigan defense, come out big. And yes, the Stallions won, but it was a lot closer of a game. You know, they'll end up playing the Roughnecks this week. Is that defense going to be that more tough defense going to be a challenge for the Stallions moving forward? I think that's something that can be exploited with this team. But as Rob even mentioned, this is a very complete roster. It's hard for this team to lose games, but especially when the games are close like this with a last second kind of field goal for the win. It shows that they have the right pieces, but they definitely have to clean up on those mistakes. By cleaning up on those mistakes, you can stay with it with the top teams in the league and, make a championship run and win the championship. You make mistakes, that could cost you the game. And it didn't cost them the game this past weekend against the Defenders, but it easily could have. And I think that's something definitely to keep an eye on moving forward. And, for the Stallions, as it was their, um, you know, kind of debut in the rain. I thought both teams handled it fine. Uh, but yeah, it was definitely a close game. A little shocked by it, and hopefully, they'll be able to get some of their things worked out by the time they play Houston. But I think it's going to be a close game.
Okay, so this was absolutely our biggest fumble last week. We were talking about how the Brahmas didn't have anyone at quarterback behind Chase Garbers, but boy, were we wrong. Quentin Dormady came on, absolutely was dominant, led the Brahmas to a huge win this past weekend. Looked like an absolute stud all around. So, Carson, is Dormady the answer for Brahmas championship hopes?
I would definitely say that he is certainly a part of it. As Rob mentioned, we weren't super high on Quentin Dormady. Uh, once Chase Garbers went down, and we unfortunately heard the news that he's going to be out for the uh, season. And honestly, I think a lot of that had to do with what we had seen out of with his talent when he played for the Orlando Guardians the last year when in the XFL. And it certainly wasn't anything that was great. He certainly had plays here and there. But I think honestly, seeing him working in a successful system that seemed pretty much geared toward his skill set, with a bunch of playmakers around him on that Brahmas offense, especially with Cody Latimer and some of the others, you know, I kind of think that, it was really the roster of the Guardians in Orlando that really kind of in that really stopped Dormady to really have the success on the field that he probably should have with a better team. And he absolutely showed that playing for the Brahmas this past weekend. Um, the Brahmas certainly outplayed the Panthers in almost every regard. The offense seemed to click defensively. They shut down EJ Perry, the whole 9 yards. And so I actually do believe that, Quentin Dormady is definitely a guy that can lead this Brahmas team to a playoff run. He certainly has the confidence and the competence in the pocket to get the ball accurately to receivers, accurately to tight ends, can run the system well enough. I wouldn't say that he was better than Chase Garbers, but he certainly is up there, maybe a step or two behind him in terms of talent wise and what he was able to do. And this was only his debut, and there's room to grow as well as a quarterback. So I do believe that, he can certainly be part of the answer. But I think what we saw last weekend was also something that will lead the Brahmas to a playoff run, potentially even the UFL championship. and that was their outstanding defensive line and defense. The only reason the Brahmas were able to shut down EJ Perry is because they were able to get to him time and time again. And unfortunately, Perry went down with that hamstring sprain injury, and knocked him out for a little bit. He didn't return for the rest of the game, but that defensive line really played outstanding. And if they can play like that every single game, tied with, you know, Quentin coming in and leading the offense the way he did, this team doesn't look like they missed a step with Chase Garbers being out for the season. You know, most teams, you would think with their starting guy down, that they wouldn't be able to compete as well with everybody else, with whoever that number two guy is. And certainly in this case, that isn't really the way it is. Um, and I think that, you know, for Brahmas fans, I think that's amazing for them to hear because, of course, with that, the news that Chase Garbers was out for the season, I'm sure that that doused a lot of hopes for playoff runs for the Brahmas. But have faith. Quentin Dormandy is here, and he's certainly playing a lot better than we even thought, but a lot of people, I think, in the UFL world thought he would.
Yeah, no, for sure. I actually saw a report that Garbers might be back in time for the playoffs. So if Dormady can
Hmm.
keep this team relevant, or at least like in the race until then, which he
Yeah.
absolutely can, he is definitely going to get you, where you need to be, Brahmas. Uh, Dormady was so good last weekend, so much better than I ever anticipated he could be. But Carson, you were absolutely right when you said that defense was honestly the most impressive part of the Brahmas game. They just have an absolutely loaded team, similar to the Stallions, where just like everywhere you look on that roster, there is strength. There really isn't a weakness that you can pinpoint on this team right now. And Dormady, who for his part absolutely balled out, looked a lot like he did, even better than he did honestly last year. In Tampa Bay, he is definitely going to take this team to the playoffs. Will it be him or Garbers that leads this team to a championship? I'm not sure. If Garbers should come back, I feel like they'll probably go back to him as their starting quarterback just because he was so efficient in that role. But there's a world where Dormady plays so well that he ends up being the starting quarterback for the Brahmas even after Garbers returns from injury in the playoffs. So Dormady very well may be the quarterback that leads this team to a championship this year. I would not be at all surprised.
So we
Oh,
kind of talked about this a little bit when talking about Quentin Dormandy and the Brahmas and their good defense. But this is something that, you know, we even discussed in regards to the Showboats and their protection of Case Cookus. And, you know, my question that I have for you, Rob, is similar to the Showboats. Are the Panthers in trouble due to the lack of quarterback protection they have on that team?
yeah, absolutely. But every time you looked up, it seemed like, they were giving up another sack or another tackle behind the line of scrimmage. In order to be successful at all on offense, you have to have an offensive line that's at least competent. And right now, they don't really have that. Granted, they were going up against one of the better defensive lines in all of spring football right now, and maybe they won't have as much of an issue handling other defensive lines, but they're going to have to play those really good defensive lines if they want any chance at winning a championship. They're going to have to play teams like the Stallions, like the Brahmas, in the playoffs. So if they want to figure out a way to win it all this year, they're going to have to fix that offensive line. It absolutely is a problem. With how bad it is right now, I wouldn't be surprised if Danny Etling also gets hurt. That quarterback, whoever's going to be standing behind there, behind that offensive line, is going to be taking a lot of hits. Maybe a way they could help address that is by, finding a more mobile quarterback. Etling is a very mobile quarterback, maybe a little more mobile than EJ Perry. I think he has the record for the longest ever quarterback rush in a preseason game for the New England Patriots. Obscure, but he does have legs. He can move. Maybe his mobility will help alleviate some of that really bad offensive line play. But even with that, until they find a way to get better blocking up front, they're never going to be able to call themselves a true contender. So yes, absolutely, I would say it's a huge problem. They have the quarterbacks. I feel like their defense is pretty good. They have good weapons, but that offensive line will keep them from doing anything they want to. So they better fix that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just seeing Perry go down like that. It's not, you know, that's not common. And of course, you know, it is. it's due to the result of multiple quarterback hits. And that really was what the game was in terms of the Panthers offense versus this Brahmas defense. It was quarterbacks getting hit and hitting the ground. And they can only take a few before those hits start hurting a lot more and could jeopardize your hopes for a good season with your starter knocked out. So absolutely, I agree. The Panthers are definitely in trouble. They need to shore up that offensive line quick. Um, Otherwise, it could lead to their downfall.
Oh man. So I forgot to say this at the beginning of the episode, but Carson, you and I had a bet on the last
Yep.
episode we made about the Renegades and the Roughnecks. Uh, the Roughnecks are much better than the Renegades, and I should have picked them instead of the Renegades as my team. That's I think that's what the bet was, that the loser had to say that. So the Roughnecks
Yep.
did manage to survive the Renegades. The game was pretty close throughout most of it. It wasn't wasn't the most aesthetically pleasing game in the world. There was definitely a lot of mistakes, but the Roughnecks did manage to get the win here, the first one of the season. Mark Thompson came back, looked phenomenal. So Carson, are the Roughnecks able to turn this season around?
Well, the first thing I will say is I don't think the Roughnecks survived the Renegades. I think it was more that they dominated the Renegades. But I digress. Going back to the question at hand, I absolutely think that it's 100% possible. Of course, as Rob mentioned, and everyone that was able to kind of watch that game, I'm sure you probably were not all too thrilled and impressed with the talent, especially I would say in the first half. It seemed like it was mistake after mistake, fumble, bad throw, interception, punt return, muff, the whole 9 yards. And it really, I certainly spent a lot of time really questioning what was going on the field. But the second half they kind of stepped up, and I think that there are a couple things going for the Roughnecks that can allow them to turn this season around. Of course, they started 0-3. Now they're 1-3. They're basically tied for third in the USFL conference. And in this league, what I will say is last year we saw the Renegades, a 4-6 team, going to the playoffs and winning the championship. And so, there could be a possibility of a team being under 500 again, being able to make the playoffs and go on a championship run and maybe win it. Um, and so, yes, I think the Roughnecks are able to turn this season around. But break it down, one thing I think that really helped, as Rob mentioned, he revitalized the run game. He absolutely uh, brought juice back to the offense, was able to kind of be that piece that they've been kind of missing for the first 3 weeks. And he played in a very limited role. He did not have the majority of the snaps. Um, and of course, that kind of makes sense based on the way that, he's still kind of coming back from that injury. They didn't want to necessarily throw him out there with contact right away. And so I absolutely expect him to be up and running almost 100% against Birmingham this upcoming week. Uh, but I think, bringing Mark Thompson back into the fold, this is a new Houston team offensively. We already saw what the wide receivers were able to do. We've already been able to see for a number of weeks now what Reed Sennett is able to do, and he's been playing very well as a competent quarterback. I wouldn't say he's the best, but he certainly is not the worst. He has the receivers around him, and Justin Hall, especially a big playmaker, that, whenever the ball gets into his hands, he's able to kind of get additional yardage just with his agility afterwards. And the defense, I thought, played very, very well against the Renegades. They certainly stopped them on multiple attempts. I don't remember what the third down conversion rate was, but it was not good. They were able to make big stops on third down. So, you know, if this team fixes some of those mistakes that they kind of made in the first half, whether it was that kick return or punt return that resulted in a fumble, Isaiah Henney fumbling the ball away, or, you know, stupid uh, false starts or offside penalties, if we can minimize that, which, you know, certainly has been minimized from from the first 3 games that they played where it was absolutely horrendous. If they keep going in this direction, they can absolutely, I think, stick it with a lot of the teams in the league. Maybe not the Stallions, maybe not the Battlehawks, maybe not the Brahmas is kind of the powerhouses in the league right now. But with some of these pieces working together now, I could absolutely see them, you know, competing with the rest of the league. So um, I think they can turn it around this season. It's obviously going to be a difficult road, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that was a great comparison you made there, Carson, to last year's Arlington Renegades. They definitely kind of remind me of that. You know, the run game is starting to come together. They have some weapons on the outside. Justin Hall was so explosive. Their defense is starting to look better. I finally noticed Chris Odom. He actually looked like he had a pretty good game. A lot of these defensive pieces they have are finally starting to click. But if you remember, the Renegades only started to look better last year after they made a trade for a new quarterback, Luis Perez.
Yeah.
That's kind of the move that brought that juice to their team that allowed them to build up momentum to go into the playoffs and win all those games and win the championship ultimately. Um, and I think the Roughnecks kind of need the same sort of spark. Mark Thompson definitely provided some of that. You know, he was fantastic on the ground. And I think he'll absolutely be a big part of that offense going forward. But I don't think he's enough because he's only a running back. So no matter how good he is, he's only going to be touching the ball 15 to 20 times a game. You know, because that's about the average number of snaps for a running back, especially someone coming back from injury. The Renegade or not the Renegades, the Roughnecks need to go out there and they need to find a piece that will give them that juice that can impact more than just 15 to 20 plays a game. And I feel like that might mean trading for a quarterback. I know Sinet was good in that game against the Renegades, or at least part of it. But when I look at Sinet and I look at Bahar and I look at I don't even remember who the other guys you have on your team are. Um,
Nolan Henderson.
Anderson, yeah, they don't necessarily have that it factor. I feel like that a lot of these other quarterbacks do, right? Like they don't have that big arm that Luis Perez has, or they don't have the laser accuracy of AJ McCarron. In order to compete for a championship against, especially against a top-notch defense like the Stallions have, I feel like they need to find their quarterback of the future. And
Mhm.
maybe there's an in-season move they can make, a trade, possibly with the Renegades. I mean, they might be looking to get rid of Luis Perez, because he has not been great this season in their system. He's also, aging, and they also have the young stud Lindsey Scott Jr. sitting behind him, waiting to take his place. So, there's a possibility right there. Maybe the Brahmas, once Garbers comes back, they'll be like, "Yeah, we're going to stick with Dormady instead," and they'll want to trade him. Do I think the Roughnecks could win their division without making a move like that, or at least get into the playoffs? Probably not win the division, but get into the playoffs. Absolutely. With the injuries the Showboats and the Panthers have had to their quarterbacks recently, and the way they're playing, it's absolutely possible for the Roughnecks to still make the playoffs as the second team in the USFL division. I wouldn't be shocked if that's how it ends up working out, especially with the way their defense and their run game is starting to click now. But for them to actually get over that hump and win the championship, I feel like they're going to need to make a move to get a quarterback. I do like Sinet, but I just don't think he has the it factor that's necessary to go ahead and win a championship like that. Every team that's won a spring league championship in the past few years has had a guy like that, whether it's Luis Perez or Alex Magoo. So I think the Roughnecks are definitely capable of turning the season around in terms of, not having a losing record and making the playoffs. But if they're going to win the championship, I feel like they need to make at least one big trade to go get a quarterback.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. You know, I really do like Reed Sinnett. I think he's certainly grown over the past number of weeks. He's gotten better as a quarterback. Um, but you know, I think something that hasn't really been explored yet is really Kenji Bahar as well, and what he was able to do for this Houston team when they were the Gamblers last season in the USFL. Of course, you know, he isn't an answer like Luis Perez was for the Renegades that led them all the way through that championship run and winning it. But he certainly seemed to have the competence on the field. I guess really the question would be is, you know, will Coach Johnson lose faith in Senate because everything that he says is that I love Senate. He's a great guy. He's a great quarterback. Like he's our guy. There hasn't been any faltering in that since he really assumed that role with Jarrett Guarantano going down. And so that I guess is really like I think the question, can they go out and make a big offseason move and or not offseason, make a season move where they grab a big name quarterback like this. But I don't know if our coach is going to be willing to go out and do that based on how much faith he has in Reed. So I guess that I mean that's kind of the issue I see with that right now. And honestly, I bet unless, hopefully it doesn't, but if Senate goes down with an injury, that's the only way I see Bahar going in or even potentially a trade to get a guy like Perez or maybe Cookus or something like that. You know what I mean? So very interesting, but yeah, they certainly need to figure out some of their pieces. They need to get it more together, play a complete full game. But there's some positives that came out this weekend that haven't seen for the first 3 weeks of the year. So yeah, there is hope. At least I have hope. Maybe I'm one of the few, but I have hope. All right, Rob. Well, this one kind of goes more towards, your boys, the Renegades. But we were kind of talking about the Roughnecks and how well they played against the Renegades and whatnot. But on the flip side of the coin, Rob, what does the Renegades' fourth loss of the season mean for this team moving forward?
Yeah, well, it basically means the season's over because you look at the division that we're in. I mean, the Brahmas, the Defenders, and then obviously the Battlehawks up there at the number one spot. There's just no chance they can realistically make the playoffs now. I feel like after sustaining four consecutive losses to begin the season, even if they were to win out, I don't know if that would be enough at 6-4 to make the second spot in the playoffs. The way some of the other teams in our division are playing right now, and with the divisional losses they already have, what's really, I think the most upsetting thing is that I feel like this was the worst game the Renegades have played this season. You know, they were close with the Stallions through at least 2.5 quarters of that game before the Stallions really blew it open and won. They were super close with, the Defenders and the Battlehawks when they played them. They lost both of those games last second on heartbreaking field goals. So this game probably towards like the second quarter, it just started to feel like it wasn't even close. After the Roughnecks scored that first touchdown that they got, it almost felt like the game was over already. And it's not because the team isn't talented, but it's because of the awful, stupid mistakes that they keep making. Whether it's Luis Perez missing wide open receivers or throwing interceptions to, defensive backs with no like noticeable Arlington Renegades wide receiver anywhere near them. Or untimely penalties that extended Roughnecks drives or ended Arlington drives. Like I remember there was this 4th and 2 conversion, but then we somehow got an unnecessary roughness penalty because Sal Cannella was like doing something with his helmet or something like that, and we ended up going from 4th and 2 to 4th and 17. It's just stupid things like that are what will lose you a football game. And I said this on last week's episode. If they continue to make stupid mistakes like that, it doesn't matter who you put in front of them. They would lose to the Roughnecks. They would lose to anyone. And it seems like they certainly are not going to get those mistakes fixed, at least this season. So I think the season is over. The question is now, will we even win one game this year? I don't know if they keep making mistakes like they are right now. Will we go to, Lindsey Scott Jr. at some point if we keep losing games, just to kind of see how he'd perform as a full-time starter? Will we trade Luis Perez for draft capital, maybe in a little bit of like a rebuilding effort looking towards next year? I think those would all be smart things to do because clearly this year is not it. We are not winning anything. We're not going to the playoffs. The team is just, I don't know what's wrong with it. It just doesn't seem in sync. Everybody is doing their own thing. They're not working together. They're not playing as a unit. They're all making dumb mistakes. It's honestly humiliating to watch and, try to support a team like that. I really hope they find some way to fix it by the end of the season. So at least we all, as Renegades fans, have hope going into next year. But this year is absolutely done. It's lost. This season is over as far as I'm concerned. And it was super disappointing, coming off a championship season to just face plant like that. But, I guess Super Bowl hangovers can happen in the XFL and UFL as well. So
Yeah, it certainly was not a good game for the Renegades against the Roughnecks. And Rob, you nailed it. I think it was really it's not necessarily the talent on the roster, it's more of the mistakes. And those mistakes unfortunately paved a way for key opportunities for the Roughnecks to utilize and capitalize on. And I think that's exactly what they did. And yeah, this doesn't look good for the Renegades moving forward. But as you mentioned, maybe there's going to be a change at quarterback. Maybe they're going to be switching up some things. So maybe there is hope. Maybe not for this season, but for next season in regards to uh, competent play. So we'll definitely see because I mean, as we've been talking and as you mentioned, Rob, it's not that you guys don't have the playmakers. It's just the mistakes that are made that cost you. That I mean that 4th and 2 play was exactly what came to mind when I thought of the game too, where they had it, they were driving it down the field. I believe they were either gonna, score to either take the lead or they were coming back to tie the game up. And then you have Sal Canella, making a helmet to helmet block that resulted in a personal foul and 15 yards moving back, and then it becomes untenable. So yeah, we'll definitely see moving forward what this Renegades team can do. Maybe they'll be able to get a win, maybe a couple wins. Um, that'll be left to see.
Yeah. High school football will not win you big boy football games. And that's a lesson they just haven't learned yet. Shifting over to something a lot more exciting, now that the Renegades are bad, in my opinion, the NFL to the NFL draft. Carson, there's been some controversy around Jaden Daniels, number 2, going to the Commanders, which seemed like a lock just a week ago. With him being kind of upset about how they handled all their pre-draft interviews, and there being rumors flying around about how he's looking at other options and might not necessarily want to go to the Commanders. So Carson, will Jaden Daniels be the second overall pick of this NFL draft on Thursday?
I absolutely think he will be. Obviously, I've been hearing those same rumors. How Washington ended up taking all of the prospects out to Top Golf. Certainly, if I was a top prospect quarterback, I would find that a little odd as well, probably be a little upset. But this situation really reminds me of CJ Stroud and the Texans last year because, going into the draft, there was these similar rumors that, Stroud was not happy with the Texans. He did not want to be drafted by the Texans. He wasn't, he wanted to go someplace else, the whole lot, which is kind of what we've been hearing about Jaden Daniels as well. And then what happened? The Texans drafted him, and then he went on to do great things, and he seems to love playing for the Texans. So I think that Jaden Daniels is probably going to be similar in that regard. I think this certainly it's not normal, but it happens quite a bit with top players. They get upset for one reason or another, but at the end of the day, they end up taking the best opportunity given to them. And I think Jaden Daniels going second overall is probably the best thing for him in terms of his future career of leading a franchise that has struggled for a long time, hopefully into the light. So I do agree that Jaden Daniels will be the second overall pick. Obviously, with Caleb Williams being the, I'm saying it's a lock because I would be so surprised if the Bears did not take him first overall. Easily the next best quarterback in this draft would be Jaden Daniels, and I think if you're the Commanders, you would be foolish to go with somebody else over Daniels.
Yeah, I think I kind of disagree with you, Carson. I think this absolutely could put doubt into the commander selecting Jaden Daniels number 2. I mean, imagine you're inside that commander's war room right now, and you finally, after years of trying, have gotten rid of Dan Schneider, or not Schneider, Snyder, Dan Snyder. Schneider's a different guy. Uh, who was absolutely toxic to your culture, right? He
Yeah.
has all these lawsuits hanging over him about like touching women inappropriately or whatever, photographing women without their consent. Your locker room was probably not a great place to be. There was lots of frustration, lots of infighting. And you finally have escaped all that. You have finally cleansed all of that out of your building and out of your team. And you're so excited to turn a fresh page. You got a new head coach. You're going to have a new quarterback, new owner, new management. All of it's new. And then you start hearing about, well, this guy, he's kind of throwing a hissy fit because he didn't like the way we dealt like with the pre-draft interviews. He's not very happy. He might not want to come here. I mean, would you want to risk bringing a locker room problem into your building after you just got rid of all these awful culture problems you already had? And I think it also depends on how close Drake May and Jaden Daniels are on the Commanders board, right? Like if Jaden
Mhm.
Daniels and Drake May are like super close, if Jaden Daniels is like a 9 out of 10 and Drake May is like an 8.5 out of 10, and they're like, well, Drake May might not be as highly graded as Jaden Daniels, but we know he won't bring a locker room problem to our team. We know he won't destroy this culture. We spent a decade trying to build, and now we're finally starting to see. So if that's the scenario the Commanders find themselves in, I could absolutely see them switching to Drake May instead of Jaden Daniels to that number 2 overall pick. I'm not saying it will happen because in my mind, Jaden Daniels is significantly better than Drake May, which I think the Commanders and most NFL teams would also probably believe. But you never know. I mean, I would say I was 100% certain that the Commanders were going to take Jaden Daniels like 2 days ago. But now that all this has happened, I would say I'm like 70, maybe even 60% certain. There's
Wow.
definitely a lot more doubt now, at least for me, that the Commanders will take Jaden Daniels with that pick. I could absolutely see them doing something like selecting J.J. McCarthy, who they were heavily linked to just a few weeks ago, or Drake May, who might have the highest ceiling of any quarterback in this draft outside of Caleb Williams. So, yeah, I still think they will end up going Jaden Daniels number 2 overall, but I absolutely would not be shocked if they decided they wanted to take a quarterback who was happy to be there as opposed to one who might not be, and creating like a whole Eli Manning to the Chargers type situation all over again. So that's the way I see it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely correct. It could be something that the Commanders don't want to bring in for locker room reasons, for problems in the future, or even in the near future. Um, I just, is even as you mentioned, Rob, I do think that Daniels is much better of a quarterback prospect than anybody else in this draft. And if you're the Commanders, you know, there probably can be easy ways to, fix the ruffled feathers that may have been in cause for some discontent, especially when, you have a chance to pick, not necessarily that, a comparable player to Jane Daniels will be Patrick Mahomes, but pick the next Patrick Mahomes and a guy that could be there for the Commanders for years to come, and a guy that, you're betting your successes on. And unfortunately for, the other quarterbacks that are in there with Jaden Daniels still on the board, I just don't know how any other would be taken above him. I feel like that would be a miss. So, yeah, I do think I would say I'm probably 90% sure that he's going to be taken second overall. I think that this pre-draft drama can be easily fixed. Just kind of as it was with CJ Stroud and the Texans, as I mentioned. So, um, I don't know if the Commanders have too much doubt over Jaden Daniels being their guy. But I mean, hey, anything can happen. That's what I keep saying to people I talk to about the draft. So I keep saying on here, I feel like, you know, Caleb Williams is the lock, and then everything other than him is pretty much up in the air. I would say Jaden Daniels is I would still think 90% shot. So still, I think 1 and 2 are pretty much locked in. But after that, it's anyone's game.
Yeah. Well, if the Commanders were so certain about Jaden Daniels, I wonder why they would just lump him in with all the other quarterbacks and all the other
Yeah,
prospects. The Bears went out of their way to give Caleb Williams special treatment when he came to visit them. All the
true.
other guys went out to dinner together, but Caleb Williams got to go out to like a more expensive restaurant by himself with the members of the, Bears that were already there instead of potential like draft prospects. If Jaden Daniels really was your guy and you were that certain of it, why were you treating him like any other draft prospect? Why were you just taking him to Topgolf? Why didn't you give him like special treatment the way you might have with Caleb Williams?
Yeah,
Um, Maybe that might be like an entitled way of thinking for a quarterback to have, but I can certainly understand where Jaden Daniels is coming from. If
absolutely.
they're that certain about him being their guy, why did you bring him in with all the other quarterbacks? It makes it seem like you're not certain. And if you're
Yeah,
not certain, then maybe who knows? Who knows what's going to happen at this number two overall pick? It's like you said, anything could happen.
yeah. Could we see even a potential trade up to number two?
That would be crazy. I would love that so much. That'd be so exciting.
Yeah, it's certainly within the cards.
For sure. Anything could happen.
Well, kind of speaking of, top quarterbacks in this draft, one thing that came up more recently, as of not, is I really think Michael Penix Jr.'s draft stock in terms of where he could be selected. For a while, especially following that injury, um, you know, people had him selected maybe second round, late first round, maybe even later. Um, but recently, there has been kind of news that he has actually sent out full medical reports to many of the general managers of NFL teams, basically fully detailing, you know, this is what happened to me, and this is how I recovered, and this is why, in an easy way, proving to them that he can go out there and be that guy for them and that they shouldn't be worried about his injury history. Um, so with that being said, Rob, and with this kind of due diligence, I would say, on Penix's part, um, do you think that Penix Jr. will be a top 10 draft pick on Thursday?
Oh man, that is a tough question. I mean, so who are the quarterbacks we know for sure going inside the top 10? Caleb Williams, Jaden
Yep.
Daniels, Drake May, and JJ McCarthy. Right? So that's going to the Bears, the Commanders, the Patriots probably, and then, maybe the Giants, we'll say would
Hmm.
take JJ McCarthy. So then where is that fifth spot for a quarterback to go? I feel like the only way we see this happen is if, like, let's say the Raiders or the Vikings, feel like maybe the Broncos at number 12 would select Michael Penix Jr. Well, I guess the Vikings are in front of that. So let's say the Raiders feel like the Broncos at number 12 will select Michael Penix Jr. and they feel like they really want Michael Penix Jr. I feel like you could definitely see a team move up to that like 7 or 8 range, maybe with the Titans. Like you said, they might trade back. Or the Falcons who want to select Dallas Turner probably or Laiatu Latu. I could see definitely one of those two team like the Raiders or the Broncos and select their quarterback of the future. If that happens, I'm absolutely certain Michael Penix Jr. will be that guy. In my opinion, he's not even the fifth best quarterback. He's higher than that. I have him as the number two quarterback in my mind. I like him even better than Jaden Daniels. I love his deep ball. I love the way he commands the pocket. I know he messes up on those short throws sometimes, which is kind of strange considering how good he is at deep passing. But everyone has stuff to work on, and that's something that could be pretty easily fixed at the next level. Um, so yeah, I absolutely think he could be a top 10 draft pick if one of these teams wants to trade up for a quarterback into the top 10, which I certainly would not say, is impossible. Like we said, if the Raiders want to jump the Broncos to get a quarterback, if the Broncos decide to go with Michael Penix instead of Bo Nix, or, if one of those teams is picking a little further back, like the Rams have been very heavily linked to Michael Penix Jr. over the past couple of days. It seems like they are super interested in him. Maybe they feel like they'd lose him to the Raiders if they let the Raiders pick and they trade up to number 8 with Atlanta in order to go get him. I absolutely think this is a realistic scenario. Definitely a team could trade into the top 10 to go get Michael Penix Jr. for sure.
Yeah, it's all within the realm of possibility. I mean, kind of keeping with that same statement of like the first draft is pretty much a lock. Second, kind of a lock. But after that, it's really a toss up. And we could absolutely see, and I think we will see a lot of teams moving up within the top 10 to draft their quarterback. Whether that be the guy they start day one or the guy they kind of keep like a Jordan Love and, give him time to grow. And I think that, these quarterbacks and these draft prospects are probably some of the better ones that have come out of college in a long time. So absolutely, I think he could be a top 10 draft pick as well. So it's going to be super interesting to see which team has that confidence in him and which team, I guess, would want to leapfrog and jump to try to get him and make sure to secure him. So
Yeah. You
very
know,
interesting.
I'm starting to think I don't think he gets past 11, right? Because that's what the Vikings are picking with their first pick. And unless one of these like wide receivers or something like that falls to them at number 11, which I highly doubt, I
Yeah.
feel like 11, if Michael Penix Jr. is still there, they'd absolutely pull the trigger, which makes it more likely in my mind, if they haven't traded up for another quarterback by that point, of course, that a team that wants Michael Penix Jr. knows that they have to get him before 11, could trade up into that top 10 spot, probably with Atlanta would be my guess to go get this guy. So yeah, the more I think about it, it makes a lot of sense, especially if the Vikings do not trade up to number 3 overall, for Michael Penix Jr. to be a top 10 pick this year.
Yeah. It's all within the realm of possibility. I can tell you that. And I'm super excited for this Thursday to see how it all folds.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be great. But we got one more, and
Oh,
we kind of been dancing around this a little bit. But Rob, do you think that the Patriots are going to trade back from their number 3 pick?
man, if you asked me last week, I would have said absolutely not. I don't think it's possible. But a bunch of reports came out today from including Diana Rossetti that the Patriots are really considering a trade back from number 3. They're listening to offers. They still want to stay at number 3 right now and take their quarterback, probably Drake May. That still seems like what they want to do. But if someone blows them away with an offer, which I absolutely would not rule out, with a bunch of teams jockeying to move up to get their quarterback, honestly, I'd say that's almost a likely scenario with all these teams trying to move up to get a quarterback this year. Yeah, I am starting to think that we will see the Patriots probably trade back from this spot. I know some likely trade up candidates, maybe the New York Giants. I know they're super interested in Drake May and trading up to get him. If they can jump up 3 spots to go get him, Patriots move back to number 6. Patriots could still grab a quarterback if they wanted to. Michael Penix Jr.
Yep.
would absolutely still be there. Or they could go ahead and grab one of the 2 best receivers in this year's draft and, maybe draft a guy like Bo Nix later on in the first round or in the second round and then have a lot of good weapons for him to throw to. Yeah, the more and more I think about it, the more and more I read about it. Obviously, this is all subject to change because this was completely different just even last week, 4 days
Yeah.
ago when we recorded the last episode. I think as of right now, my guess would be the Patriots trade down with either the Giants or the Vikings who want to move up to get Drake May.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's seeming more and more likely as we get closer to the draft. I know we kind of messed around with this idea back when we did one of our mock drafts where we had the Patriots trading, out of that number 3 spot. I think we even had him trading out with the Vikings, if I'm not mistaken. One of those teams. Anyways, um, it certainly can happen. It certainly can happen, and I think it really all depends on first off, who are the first 2 quarterbacks that are going to be taken or players, which we can assume is most likely going to be Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. And then the Patriots really have to think to themselves, okay, do we like one guy out of all of them that we want to make sure we secure and get before anyone else can? Or if they're all kind of in the same boat of, well, either one would work, then I think we could see the Patriots moving back with, and it doesn't have to be far, just like Rob said, it could be with the Giants, for example, and then the Giants might have an idea of who they want to take, and the Patriots still have that ability to still pick up a quarterback. because that certainly has been some of the rumors that I've been seeing as well, that the Patriots aren't high on Drake May, that they aren't high on really any other quarterback except Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. And of course, we expect those two picks to be off the board by the time they can pick. So it's certainly going to be very interesting. But I absolutely think it is a strong possibility that they will take back, or they will trade back from number 3 to just try to attain some more draft picks as well. I'm sure they'll walk away this draft with a quarterback, you know, and I'm sure they're going to walk away from this draft with other pieces that can fill a lot of the holes that they have on their roster. It's not just one, it's not just they need a quarterback and then they're good to go. There's a lot of offensive pieces that they're missing. And so, they could absolutely trade back, maybe grab a receiver with that top pick, and then maybe draft, Michael Penix later in the first round if he's still there, or maybe a Bo Nix if he's still there. It's definitely within, not to repeat what I said, but the realm of possibility. So it certainly can happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What if they even do something kind of like the Texans did last year, where they trade back and then trade back up, right? What if they go from
Mhm.
like 3 to 11 and get the Vikings' second first round pick in addition to that, and then
Yeah.
they give up like a third or a second this year to move back up and get a guy like JJ McCarthy.
Yep.
Then they'd have 2 first round picks. They get their quarterback and they'd pick up an extra first round this year in order to help build out that roster a little bit and maybe get a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. to add to that wide receiver room. I honestly think that'd be pretty smart for them to do if they're not completely sold on a guy like Drake May. Get another quarterback and also get some draft capital to help build out that roster. Like you said, if they're happy with multiple guys, why not do that? So yeah, absolutely. I think this is a realistic possibility here.
Yeah. It's just going to be really exciting to see how it all happens, because I'm envisioning this draft to be so many trades and all this movement that goes around. Um, because I don't think teams are just going to stay put and wait for whoever is going to land in their pocket. I think that there is a handful of teams that know who they want and they're going to do what it takes to go get them. And so I think we're going to see major, major, major moves.
Yeah,
And we'll definitely be back next week to talk all about them. So stay with us, because it's going to be exciting. It's going to be super exciting
for
talking about
sure.
future talent.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at a lot of these like big draft guys like Mayock or Brugler or Daniel Jeremiah, and all of them seem to believe that this will be the most chaotic and hardest to predict draft we have seen in a long time. So I think it's going to be absolute chaos on Thursday. I don't think anybody knows really what's going to happen, not even the teams themselves, which usually have a pretty good picture of how the first round will shake out. So it's going to be exciting for sure, and I cannot wait.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, Zach Wilson was traded just today to the Denver Broncos for, I think it was like a sixth and a seventh, or maybe it was just a sixth. Not a lot of draft capital either way. So, really struggled with the Jets for the past couple of years. Has not been the guy at all that they thought he would be. Broncos desperately need a quarterback because they don't really have a good one on their roster right now. So, Carson, will this change of scenery help Zach Wilson's career?
I think it will. I think it will. And I think there is, kind of 3 reasons why. I will say that this change of scenery will help him. One, I think playing in the New York market is tough for any young player. There's a lot of pressure on you. There's a lot of naysaying if you mess up. It's obviously the largest market in the country. And likewise, that comes with, the largest market when it comes to fans and following and whatnot. And with that being the case, with you being picked second overall and you're not living up to that hype, people have things to say about you. And most of the time, they're not really great things. And so your confidence as a player, when all you're hearing is negative around you, even if it's in the locker room or even just the fan base, coaching staff, whatnot, that can affect your play as a quarterback. Especially as a quarterback, as that is one of the most important positions on the field. If you aren't in the right headspace to play for your team because you don't feel like your teammates, your coaches, your fans are behind you 100%, it's tough to overcome challenges. And we also have to understand that, Zach Wilson came into the Jets organization when they were at a historical low. And so, he didn't have a lot of things going for him in his first couple seasons. And of course, as the team built up around him, the negativity, I think, also brought down his level of play. But I will say there were still flashes. We saw that in a number of games where he was able to do great things with the ball. And it shows that those skills are still there. They just need a bit more unpacking. So I think him moving to Denver is going to be good because it's a new spot. Of course, he has still some of those challenges to overcome in terms of, well, he hasn't really been great for a second overall pick. But with the new fan base, I think that could end up helping him move in a positive direction. Number two is coaching wise. Sean Payton is a much more, I wouldn't say competent because I really do like Robert Saleh. I think he's been doing great stuff for the Jets. But Sean Payton has gone out there and proven to be a top coach in this league time and time again. And the unfortunate situation in New York at this time is Robert Saleh's job is kind of on the line. If he doesn't produce this season, we could even see him potentially, being removed. And, the cycling of coaches doesn't help a young quarterback to grow either. And so we don't think, at least I have no doubt in my mind right now, that Sean Payton won't be the head coach of the Broncos moving forward for a number of years because of how much they gave up to get him and bring him into the building, especially in building the team that he wants. And I think it could be a fresh start, for Zach Wilson. Kind of the third point is he's clearly not going to be the starter. Still has some work to do. But maybe under Sean Payton's hand, he can, unlock some of that ability that he's shown in a couple games that he's played for the Jets and be a much more competent quarterback in doing that every game, not just a couple games. I expect the Broncos to draft a quarterback here, and they're probably going to just throw him out and see what he can do. But Zach Wilson could be a good backup quarterback. He could be a good guy to step in between games. So I do think that this is certainly going to help Zach Wilson's, success in terms of his career. I don't know necessarily if he's going to be the top two pick like he was drafted to be. I think he certainly will fall in as kind of being a quarterback in the league, not necessarily anyone great. But I think this move to the Broncos can certainly open up the potential for him to be great. Maybe with a new coaching staff and maybe a fan base that can learn to believe in him. Clearly in New York, it was not working for him. And he certainly would not succeed in that system again. So good for him to move on. Let's see what he can do in Denver.
Yeah, no, I agree for the most part. I think especially having Sean Payton as his head coach will be a huge help getting him out of his shell. If anyone can save Zach Wilson as a quarterback, it's definitely that guy. He's an offensive mastermind. Although he wasn't great with Russell Wilson. So I'm not exactly sure what that was all about. Maybe that was more about internal conflict or something like that. But we'll see. Sean Payton couldn't save Russell Wilson, but maybe he can save Zach Wilson. I think Zach Wilson is much more of a blank slate. He hasn't had anywhere near as much success or experience as Russell Wilson did, so he's probably much more malleable, much more open to being coached. Not quite a diva like Russell Wilson might be. I think Sean Payton sees him kind of like as a blank book where he can write down what he wants to and mold Zach Wilson into the type of quarterback he wants to. So absolutely, I think that will help. The question is, how much do the Broncos believe in Zach Wilson, right? Did they trade for him with the idea, yeah, he'll be our starter this year? Or is it, yeah, we'll keep him like on the bench and see if he can develop a little bit, maybe be worth something in the future? If that's the case, then they're probably still drafting a quarterback in the first round this year, right? They're probably
Yeah.
still going to go out there and get Bo Nix. Maybe Zach Wilson's like an insurance policy in case they don't end up getting Bo Nix. But if they go out there and get that first round quarterback, Zach Wilson's career is just going to be on the bench with him. And they only have him under contract for 1 year. So would sitting on the bench for 1 year, behind a first round quarterback who is the future of that franchise and definitely not you, help your career. I mean, I don't think it would help you at all, honestly. I think that would just be kind of like a wasted year for you almost. Unless Zach Wilson can go out there like and prove that he has something left in the tank. If Sean Payton really can improve him as a quarterback and then he gets a chance to prove it on the field, that I think you could definitely see revive his career. But if he ends up just sitting on the bench, not doing anything, maybe Sean Payton will still help him. Maybe he'll still be a better quarterback after that, but he won't get a chance to prove it. So in the long run, maybe it will be good for his career to be with Sean Payton for a year. But he's not going to be the main focus if they have this new rookie quarterback they need to help get prepared. So honestly, I think this question really depends on what the Broncos do in the draft. And if they go get a guy that they want to be their guy, and Zach Wilson ends up just being the backup.
Yeah. And we could even potentially see, Zach Wilson could be the first kind of transfer from the NFL to the UFL, possibly, in terms of a quarterback who is looking to, perfect his game a little bit and prove that he can maybe do a little bit more than what he's been able to already put together. So it's possible. I think Ben DiNucci is still on the Broncos.
He is. Yep.
So I mean that's even a success story in itself from the XFL. So yeah, uh, we'll see what happens with Zach Wilson, but I think you're right, Rob. It really depends on what the Broncos do in the draft.
Yeah, for sure. Cowboys legend Ben DiNucci, by the way.
All righty. Well, moving on to our post week 4 power rankings for the UFL. You may see there has been some jostling around, and we're going to start breaking them down for you. So, Rob, who do we have as number 1 on our power ranking list?
Yeah,
Which
and
is a
this is
change.
This
Yeah.
is absolutely going to be the most controversial thing we probably have on our power rankings right here. We have the St. Louis Battlehawks as the number 1 team. And I know you might be looking at that and saying, how can a team with 1 loss be below or above a team with no losses? Well, the thing I think we have to keep in mind is this Battlehawks team is not the same team as it was when it lost that first game. Getting Jacor Pearson back, that's like taking Tyreek Hill and adding him to a team in the NFL, right? If you added Tyreek Hill to any team, they would obviously take a jump up a spot or two in the power rankings. Also, it's kind of about how the Stallions looked this past weekend. They did not look the best. They almost lost to the DC Defenders, who aren't the best team in the league. I don't think they're anywhere close to the best team in the league. Look at our power rankings; they're right in the middle of the pack. The fact that the Stallions seem to be on somewhat of a downward trajectory, while the Battlehawks seem to be on somewhat of an upward trajectory and are adding a key piece like Jacor Pearson, I think warrants putting the Battlehawks over the Stallions. What I will say is when these two teams play, it's going to be about the most exciting thing I can imagine because it's the best defense in the league versus the best offense in the league. And we'll see which one of those two ends up winning out. But yeah, Battlehawks with Jacor Pearson and Aitman and Butler, it's just too much. I think for any team to handle right now. So Battlehawks number 1.
And then number 2, I mean, Rob pretty much spelled it out. We have the Birmingham Stallions. And it's not that we're putting them below the Battlehawks because we think that they're not a good team. They certainly are. They are a very complete team. The struggles against the defenders could be just one game. But looking at the wide receiver room and the offensive powerhouse that the Battlehawks have, it's tough not to have the Stallions. It's tough to put the Stallions above the Battlehawks here. So until that face-off game between the Stallions and the Battlehawks, I would probably say these two teams are going to be near the top, battling for that first and second position. And I think that game's really going to decide it.
Yeah. Here at number 3, we have a team that's kind of been a picture of dominance all season long outside of one off game they had. And that's the San Antonio Brahmas. We kind of have some egg on our face because we said they would really fall off last week. But, they proved us wrong. Quentin Dormady came out, was slinging it around. That defense was phenomenal. Their weapons looked great. The Brahmas, despite the injury to their starting quarterback, Chase Garbers, look possibly even better than they did last week. So they are firmly the third best team in our rankings right now. And if the Stallions manage to drop one or the Battlehawks do, I definitely could see them moving up this list very quickly.
Absolutely. At number 4, we have the DC Defenders. This is a team that, I think really played well against the Stallions and really utilized the Stallions' turnovers for their own gain. And it's certainly not the best team, but they also aren't the worst. And they seem to be getting even better. Every snap that Tamu has, it seems like he's getting more and more comfortable within the pocket, getting the receivers the ball. That run game seemed to be a little bit better. But, we have them, of course, above a couple teams, but they just aren't good enough to be higher than the Brahmas, the Stallions, and the Battlehawks. I think those are teams that when they would play, they would probably lose to. So at number 4, we have the DC Defenders.
Yeah, and here at number 5, we have the Michigan Panthers. They're kind of in a little bit of a tailspin right now because they just lost EJ Perry, at least for a little bit. He might come back sooner than later. Who's obviously one of the better quarterbacks in the league, replaced by Danny Etling, who obviously was not anywhere near as good as EJ Perry. Their roster overall, I think, kind of saw a little bit of a struggle this past week. Their offensive line wasn't great. That's why EJ Perry got hurt in the first place. We talked about their offensive line being a real struggle. They have some good pieces on that team, but as long as their offensive line keeps struggling the way it does, I don't think they can ever be truly counted among the great teams in this league. So they're certainly better than some of the other teams on this list because they have multiple wins, which several of the teams on this list cannot say. And they might win more games this season, again, which several of the teams on this list might not be able to say. But they are not anywhere near in the same league as the Battlehawks, Stallions, or Brahmas. And I think the Defenders would probably beat them right now in a game as well. So they're at number 5.
At number 6, slowly keep creeping up the power rankings, are my Houston Roughnecks, and they will continue that creep. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? My hope may just be misplaced. But at number 6, we have the Houston Roughnecks. And yes, they're there for, I would say, more logical reasons, other than my extreme fandom for them. They certainly played a lot better than they have the past weeks, which isn't really saying much. But they have a lot of pieces going right for them. With Mark Thompson's return, Reed Sinnett being getting more comfortable in the pocket, less mistakes, and they're certainly not a team that I would pick to win over any of the teams above them. But I think that they could do really well against the Showboats if they play them again. And of course, they beat the Renegades. So at number 6 for the Houston Roughnecks, if they fix those mistakes, they could be even higher and keep healthy, of course, as that's kind of the issue with the Panthers and Showboats right now. But yeah, right now they're sitting at number 6. They only have one win of the season. Have to prove a little bit more to get higher.
Yeah, number 7, we have another team with only one win on the season, the Memphis Showboats. They have not been good all season long, and like we talked about earlier, they lost their starting quarterback, Case Cookus, who was one of the only good players on their entire team for a long period of time, in all likelihood. So, losing their great quarterback, not really a lot of talent on that roster elsewhere. It's kind of hard to have them anywhere but just above the team that has no wins at all on this season. So they are number 7 in our power rankings.
And Rob, who's number 8?
Number 8, we have my Arlington Renegades. Just so bad. Makes mistakes all over the place. Cannot be consistent on offense. They have the worst defense in the league. Literally everything that can go wrong is going wrong. They are terrible and they have no wins and they deserve to be at number 8 on this power ranking. So yeah,
That's tough. That must have hurt Rob to say.
just a little bit. Just my soul dying is all that's.
Oh my goodness. Well, there you have it, folks. Those are our post week 4 power rankings. Um, Feel free to debate our choices, agree with them. Let us know down below in the comments section. Love to hear from you guys. And post your power rankings if you think ours are a little bit incorrect or you think yours is better. Let us know, and always great to hear from you guys. But moving on, we have our Redzone Rodeo picks of the week. And for week 5, we have another doubleheader, both on Fox. And these 2 games will be played on Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We have the San Antonio Brahmas playing at the Arlington Renegades, as well as the Birmingham Stallions against the Houston Roughnecks, and that will be in Rice Stadium at Houston. Don't know why they keep doing these double headers. I feel like it would be better for views to not have them going on at the same time, but who knows? Maybe there'll be a rain delay like last week and we'll be able to watch both games at the same time, um, or be able to see both games. And then, of course, we have the two games slotted for Sunday. We have the 12 o'clock Eastern time game between the St. Louis Battlehawks at the DC Defenders, and then concluding at the 3 p.m. game, the Michigan Panthers at the Memphis Showboats. So to get into our picks of the week, Rob, first up we have the San Antonio Brahmas versus the Arlington Renegades. Why do we think that the Brahmas are going to be victorious in this match?
Because the Brahmas are very good and the Renegades are very bad. The Brahmas have a fantastic defense, great weapons, great quarterback play. The Renegades have none of those things, and they make a ton of mistakes. And I don't think this will be very close or fun to watch at all. So that's why the Brahmas will win this by a lot.
Very simple. Very, very simple.
Simple but sad.
Sad. Yeah. Alrighty. And between the Birmingham Stallions and the Houston Roughnecks, we are selecting the Birmingham Stallions as kind of our pick of the week. However, I will go on record and say I believe there is an upset in the works. Why? I don't know. It's a gut feeling. Could it be a gut feeling like I had in the NFL playoffs where all of my gut feelings were wrong? Absolutely. But I'm just feeling like there will be an upset this week, and I think it will be the Roughnecks handing the Stallions their first loss of the season. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about why the Stallions are going to win. And that's honestly, you just look at the roster. It's a complete roster. This team is undefeated. They have found ways to win games, even if they're close in the rain and whatnot. I think heading into that Houston crowd will be tough for them, as I think that there will be probably more fans for Houston, especially after that win at home against the Renegades, kind of bringing some juice back to the city of Houston. But I do think that, this game could be close, but I do think the Stallions do have the edge. They just have a better complete roster, better coach, better, offensive scheme and whatnot, and they don't make as many mistakes. And if the Roughnecks go out and make mistakes like they did, and like they have been doing these past weeks, then it's not going to be very close at all. So the Roughnecks need to clean that up in order to stay in it. But I do still think the Birmingham Stallions uh, will be slotted to win this game.
Yeah, for sure. Then we have the St. Louis Battlehawks taking on the DC Defenders. We just talked about how the St. Louis Battlehawks are the best team in the league, in our opinion. They're so loaded at every position on offense. It's not even funny. Their defense, we think, is comparable to the DC Defenders. So you have two similar defenses and one offense that's just way, way, way better than anyone else's in the league. And it's not a very tough choice here. St. Louis Battlehawks absolutely will probably beat the DC Defenders.
And for the last game of the weekend, we have the Michigan Panthers facing off against the Memphis Showboats. And this, I would say, probably, Rob, was the more tougher of the games to kind of pick, just because really the questions at quarterback. There hasn't been anything official released yet of the status of both EJ Perry and Case Cookus. We've seen Case Cookus, of course, come back from being benched due to injury. And he was right back into the next game. This injury to his shoulder and potentially collarbone area could be a bit more than just the injuries that he sustained to his knee and knee area the past game when they played against the Stallions. And EJ Perry with that hamstring, that could be something that heals within a week, could be something that heals a little bit longer. But I think outside of quarterback, which is obviously a big position for both of these teams, when their starters are in, they play a lot better than when their backups are in. Uh, I do still think that the Panthers have a better all-around team. I think they have a really good defense. And at the end of the day, if both backups are playing and it is, Danny Etling versus, Troy Williams, then I think the Michigan Panthers defense will be able to find a way to stop Troy Williams and the Showboat's offense that has stuttered and stopped when Troy Williams gets in after Case Cookus goes out. So that being the reasoning, I believe, and we believe here at the Redzone Rodeo, that Michigan Panthers will be beating the Memphis Showboats in Memphis.
For sure.
All right, and moving on to our final segment, the Redzone Rodeo Clowns of the Week. Now, Rob, who are we going to start off making fun of first? Not really making fun of, but you know what it is.
Oh,
Us.
yes,
Yay.
of course. Man, this was so bad. We were so certain, Carson. We had an entire segment on last week's episode about how the Brahmas were just going to be so bad now. They didn't have that guy to replace Chase Garbers. They were good. We had them, I think, fifth or sixth in our power rankings. And we were even
Something.
debating if that was too high for them because we were like, "Oh man, they're not doing anything now." And then Quentin Dormady here, comes out, lights it up. Their defense is amazing. It's just, we were so incredibly wrong about every aspect of what we said about the Brahmas last week. You know, I don't think we could be more clowns of the week than we are right now on this one.
Absolutely. It's certainly a swing and a miss. I will say that. Um, and I think we even mentioned that earlier too. I really think that, for me at least personally, watching Quentin Normandy play for the Guardians in the XFL, that kind of shaped my vision of he's an okay quarterback, but can't really get the job done. But with a team like the Brahmas around him, he didn't seem to miss a step. So congratulations, Brahmas. You are back on track. Unfortunately, we were dead wrong. So we are Red Zone Rodeo Clowns of the Week.
As we should be. Oh man, I hate this so much. Why is the UFL broadcasting two games at the same time? They're struggling right now to get the views that they need to survive. Why would they make it harder on themselves? I know that there's playoff basketball and playoff hockey and baseball and all those things going on right now. And maybe this is an attempt to not compete with those events, but why are you competing with your own game? Because you're
Yeah.
guaranteeing that you're going to split what views you would normally get in half at the best, right? If you had it competing with like basketball or hockey or something like that, I feel like it would do better than just splitting the number in half, right? I mean, I don't understand the logic behind this at all. If your views decrease from like 1 million to 800,000 because you're competing with a playoff basketball game, that's fine. That's still 800,000 views. But if you split the games in half and you have them happen at the same time, then you're going to take 1 million views and turn it into 500,000. So you took potentially 2 million because you would have had 1 million for each and you turned it into just 500,000. You're getting 25% of the views that you otherwise would have had. It doesn't make any sense at all. I don't like this. I don't know why they're doing this. It needs to stop. UFL, you are a Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week for this type of scheduling.
Yeah. And I think that really sums it up too, because, my only thought was like, well, maybe they don't have the ability to show on these broadcast like major broadcasted stations based on other events. But especially with me, I feel like people would be more inclined to watch football than they would the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs. And I'm not talking about like the diehard fans of those groups, but in general, I feel like at this time of the year, it's the off season for the NFL. It's waiting for the draft, the excitement of that, and then there's not really much to watch. So for a lot of people, I feel like they just turn on. Oh well, I guess it's the hockey playoffs. We'll turn that on or something. Now you have football, which is a sport that, especially in the United States, tops any other sport in terms of viewership, followers, whatnot. And then you have, find a way at UFL to be able to not broadcast these games at the same time. Because as Rob just mentioned, you are only cutting in half the viewership, if not more. And right now, you need all the viewership you can get. So who cares if you're dragging some from playoff hockey games? They probably don't care about that anyways. They probably want to see the UFL, but they can't now because it's now a regional thing. You can only get this game. You can't get the other game, or you have to go through a lot of different loops and whatnot to get to the one game you want to see. So I really hope they stop this too. Not a smart idea. Get the most views you can. and that will help build up the league.
Yeah, for sure. Because like let's say even Fox has like a playoff basketball game or something, and that's why they're having a double header because they don't have another time slot to put the UFL game in. Then why did you get those UFL games for that weekend? Why wouldn't you let ABC or ESPN or someone like that take it, you know?
Yeah.
Because you're still hurting the UFL. I mean, it might be for your own financial gain, but that's not good. Why are you hurting UFL viewership just for money? You
Yeah.
should want the UFL to succeed because you have a huge ownership stake in it. It's been millions of dollars invested in it. It's bad strategy. It's bad business
Let's hope they get better.
for sure. Yeah.
And finally, for our last Red Zone Rodeo clowns of the week, this really is just atrocious. Maybe I'm the only one, as I've mentioned before, that really cares about how uniforms look. And for those who were with us last week, you all probably saw me kind of, breaking down why the Jets uniforms just didn't make much sense. Their new uniforms. I could not believe that the Broncos released these, and this was not a joke. This is well worse than what the Jets did. I don't even know what's going on. Really, the only uniform that is in this new Mile High collection that I think is okay and decent is the throwbacks. Which, how can you mess up on the throwbacks? Because they're literally taking an old uniform and just making them new. So there's no change. What happened with your old uniforms? I understand you want a new look. I understand you want to turn a new leaf. It's a new Broncos thing. Teams do this all the time when they kind of, want to be a different viewed differently. They change their look. They change what's going on. But man, this was like a swing and a miss 20 times over. Like, I don't know what this was. I like you look at the sunset orange. What's going on? Like, that's probably the best one out of the two out of the three of those. The midnight navy, why is there just the helmet that's just white? I It doesn't look good. Like, I feel like that would look so much better on the white jersey. Like the whole helmet thing is just messed up. I don't understand. And this just is really bad. Like, again, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one that actually really cares about how these teams look. And maybe everyone's just like, "Oh, well, he's just going on again about the uniforms." But whoever they're hiring to be the guys that design these uniforms, these are NFL teams. I, I hate to throw them under the bus, but the designers of these uniforms and the people that okayed them and they were like, that's our new look. You all are Road Zone Rodeo Clowns of the Week. This looks bad. This looks awful. I would hate to be a Broncos fan right now. And this is the choice for the new uniforms that you can get, new jerseys. I would be just disgusted to go to the Mile High Stadium and watch a team play with these uniforms. They're not pleasant to look at. They look all discombobulated, and man, yeah, what a miss. What a miss. And I always thought the Broncos had really cool colors, a great logo, and their old uniforms had a lot going for them. And they'd go out and do this as a change. Oh my goodness. Please just go back to your old uniforms. This
Yeah.
sucks.
I don't normally criticize uniforms very much because I don't really care too much about them, but this is bad. This is really bad. They need to fix this. I mean, Carson, you made a great point. I feel like if they switched the helmet for the Summit White and the Midnight Navy, that
Yeah.
would be fine. That would look
Yeah.
so much better if they had white and like dark blue and black instead of, what they have right now. I
Yeah.
don't really know what happened here. I feel like they had professionals working on this that they paid a lot of money, so I don't know how it could have possibly gone so horribly wrong, but it
Yeah.
absolutely did. So
Man, Zach Wilson must hate knowing that this is the uniform scheme he has to wear now.
absolutely, he is probably not
Goodness.
very happy.
No, I wouldn't be. Wow. Because honestly, they look like the Bears. Like, I know it's not the Bears, but they really look like the Bears.
Yeah, they look like the Bears, or they almost look like a college football team. They don't even
Yeah.
look like an NFL team with this uniform,
Yeah. I don't know. Like, when I like try not to think about the Broncos and I just look at them, it looks like something the Bears would do.
especially the
And this,
sunset orange. Yeah,
yeah. Oh my goodness. This is bad. This is really bad. I hope you wear your throwback uniforms. every game this year because that's the only way you salvage this. Oh my goodness. Well,
Good Lord.
tragedy. Sorry, Broncos fans.
Broncos country is not riding.
No. Well, anyways, with that, are gonna wrap up our show. And again, just want to say a big thank you to you all. Thank you for all sticking around and supporting us, supporting the channel, helping it grow. It's been great kind of being with you for only a couple months. It's crazy that we've only been, doing this since the beginning of January. So we just want to thank you all for being here at the get-go, being here at the onset, and staying with us. Every like, subscription, and share really helps the channel. So we encourage you, if you're a first-time listener, please absolutely like, subscribe, and share. Share this with people who, might have an interest in hearing what we have to say about the UFL and the NFL, the draft, everything regarding the football world. And of course, we keep saying this, but the hope is in the near future to have more interaction with comment sections and live shows, and maybe get even some of you guys here on the air. And so obviously that would be really great and awesome to do. But, first and foremost, thank you for all the support that you've shared and given, throughout these past couple months. And can't wait to continue on this journey with you for many, many more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, this is always like the best part of my week, getting to talk about football with you guys. It's just so much fun. Thank you for, being here with us. And yeah, we'll see y'all next week.
Alrighty, guys. Take care. Enjoy the draft. Enjoy the UFL games for week 5. Catch you on the other side. Signing off for now. See ya.